Welcome to the Project Endure podcast, the place where we talk about life, endurance, persistence, perspective, and so much more. I'm Joe Rinaldi, and I'll be your host. Let's jump in. Welcome to episode 17 of the Project Endure podcast. We have myself, Joe Rinaldi, and we have a very special guest in upstate New York, Josh Evans. Josh, how you doing, man?
Doing really well. You can hear me all right?
I can hear you great, man. I was just telling you before we recorded that just before I hopped on the Zoom call to record the podcast, I was thinking to myself that I need a neon sign behind me. Maybe my name, maybe Project Endure, something else, do hard things. And as soon as we hopped on the Zoom, the first thing that I see is this big neon sign behind your head. What does it say? Your head's kind of in the way a little bit.
Josh Evans IRL. It's the name of my new podcast that's actually launching. I don't know when this episode will go up, but my podcast, Josh Evans IRL, is actually going up. Shameless plug, January 31st. So
awesome. So this will be out first or second week of February. So If you're listening, go check out Josh's podcast. But Josh, why don't you give the people kind of a little bit of background and just introduce yourself?
Awesome. Thank you. I first want to say thank you for having me on your podcast. I know we had talked a little bit a week or two ago, and I'm really excited for this. My name is Josh Evans. I'm an online fitness coach, predominantly working with people who are trying to lose body fat, lose weight, and regain healthy habits that are sustainable for them long term. I got my start in fitness really early on. I grew up an overweight kid, got bullied quite a bit as a child in high school, and found myself and was able to express myself through fitness at an early age. I went to Syracuse University, shout out, go Orange, for my undergrad, and did my graduate work at Florida Atlantic University, working with the athletes at both schools there. Got out of collegiate athletics when I realized that there wasn't a whole lot of money to be made, and the grind and commitment. I didn't really want to bounce around. Living in South Florida, obviously, for about a decade. So was able to grow my roots there and really establish a successful in-person and then obviously online business in South Florida, and moved back up here to upstate New York about maybe 4 or 5 months ago to start my family.
It's really exciting, man. Yeah, we connected on the phone about 2 weeks ago. And fun fact, you are actually the first guest on this podcast in 17 episodes that I did not know prior to setting up the podcast episode. So we reached out to you. You were gracious enough to respond, and we hopped on the phone, and it felt like a great fit. So, I know a little bit more of your backstory from that conversation, but I figured we might as well just dive right in and see where it takes us. So I'm going to ask you the first question, which is, what is the hardest thing or circumstance that you've ever had to handle? So in other words, something that life threw at you that you didn't have a choice in.
Well, I think, the first thing that pops to my head, and we had kind of talked about this, before the podcast, is growing up in a low income area and, coming from a single parent home. My mom raised me by herself, and she had me at 24 as a really early age to obviously have a kid. It would scare me. Can I swear?
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay. It scared the shit out of me. I'm 30 now, about to have my first kid. And I always think, like, how crazy it must've been for her being 24 years old, as a single parent. I mean, my dad left her when she was 6 months pregnant with me. So couldn't imagine, having to raise a kid being that young. 24 years old, I was running around South Beach, like acting like a fool, So coming from a single parent home in a low income area, like, I didn't have a ton of great role models growing up. Right. I was lucky enough to have a few people in my corner, throughout my childhood, and especially, as I started becoming a young adult, that really, guided me to the person I am today. And I wouldn't be who I am without their influence. Right. But my mom was obviously very busy, trying to make sure that we had a roof over our head and food on the table. So I didn't really have that role model or that person that would really instill the type of confidence that I now, understand that a person needs in life. Right. Mm. So that I would say would be the biggest, circumstance, or the hardest thing that I've had to deal with. Right. Is like how to not allow that thought in the back of your head saying you're not good enough, allowing that to take control, and really understanding that the success that you want really starts with your mindset, right? If you can't think about the success that you're going to have in your head and you don't believe in it, you're never going to be able to achieve it.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. And, I can't relate to your childhood from the aspect of having only one parent, but I would imagine that in many ways, that was really tough on you from a self-confidence standpoint. And it sounds like you were able to break through that struggle a little bit, that voice in the back of your head that was saying, you're not good enough, you can't do this. And I'm curious for you, like if there was a single turning point for you where that all changed, or if it was more of kind of a slow, step-by-step process to get through that.
Great question. I really think that, our lives are really like books. You have specific chapters, you have specific points in your life in which you really kind of turn the page, and, no pun intended there, and I think along these stages or these chapters of your life, you go through ups and downs, right? You go through periods of belief, you go through periods of disbelief. And, I would really separate my life so far into, really three different sections, right? You have my childhood when I didn't believe anything. I didn't believe in myself at all. I thought that I wasn't really capable of doing anything great. Again, in the back of my head, I always knew like, okay, I was going to get out. I was going to be able to do big things. But when you're constantly told that you're not good enough, when you're constantly told that, you're not attractive enough, or you're not athletic enough, or, you're not smart enough, even though I was fairly smart. So that's kind of how I knew I had my out, right? I knew that I was going to be successful because I was always one of the smarter kids in my area. But when you're told you're not good enough from, the majority of your peers, it can be pretty daunting. It can be pretty discouraging, when it comes to building your self-confidence, right? And your belief in what you're capable of. So that's really where I think my roots in fitness especially came from, right? Was, now I try to help people understand that they are capable of more than they believe, right? And that it really just takes hard work, it takes dedication, it takes the right plan of action, and then implementation of that plan. And I know that if you stick with something long enough, if you have that type of consistency, you'll be able to overcome any barrier, right? It just takes relentless effort and patience. And that really stems from that first really stage or chapter in my life of my childhood where, most of my peers and a lot of the pressures we get and a lot of the disbelief we get comes from our peers, right? You see, especially now with social media, right? I work, in the digital age and I work predominantly on social media. That's where I get my clients from. That's, where I put all my content out. You see this curated idea of how people are living their lives. Obviously, me personally being in social media for as long as I have, I know that it's just it's just a curated form of what their actual lives are. Everyone's going through their own challenges. Everyone has their own, thought where, oh, I'm not good enough, or this person has more than me, or whatever it might be. But being able to overcome those thoughts, being able to overcome the fact that you think that you're not good enough and just continue to work, I think is an important part of being successful, right? Whether it be with your health, even yourself, right? We were talking about your story when we had our phone call before the podcast on, all the challenges that you've had to overcome in life. And, credit to you for not giving up, because I know a ton of people would have just folded and said, oh, woe is me. There's not much I can really do given the things that life has thrown at you, but you haven't given up, right? And look at where you are now, right? So I think that that's something that other people can look at and say, okay, well, if Joe can do it, if Josh can do it, why can't I do it? Right? I mean, I was 230 pounds at my heaviest, in high school. And again, I didn't really have a great role model in terms of building self-confidence, in terms of building my self-esteem, in terms of understanding how I can actually be healthy, how I can cook my own food, right? We ate out a lot because I grew up in a single parent home. Exercise wasn't really a big thing outside of like me playing sports, and it was just go to practice and that was it. There's no working out. There's no going for walks. There's none of this. So now having the platform that I do have and having the ability to coach people, that's something that I really try to instill in them. So I say what I do now really focuses on helping people get out of that first stage that I was also in. Then I kind of moved to college, and this is where I feel like I started to really build self-esteem. And it was a slow burn, right? My first 2 years at Syracuse, I was still that, that low self-esteem guy who, I mean, I love my friends from Syracuse, but I wouldn't say that I was the most popular out of that group of guys, And it wasn't really until my junior year that I like to say I hit my stride, and I started to really say, okay, Josh, like you can talk to girls, you can be one of the more intelligent people in the classroom. You can chime in. I worked for the football team at Syracuse, and I helped train the athletes there as an intern. I say help, I really like clean the benches and stuff, but it was really my junior year that I said, okay, like you have something in you that is special that other people can benefit from, and you just have to be confident in who you are. And that's really where I feel like I broke out of my shell. That's when I started to understand that it didn't really matter what other people thought of me, right? Like, fuck their opinions. What mattered was what I thought of me and what I wanted to do in life and what I believed in. And that I should be able to voice my own opinion, right? Without feeling scared about what other people were going to think about that, And I don't really like using the term cancel culture because I think it's very overplayed, right? Especially nowadays, right? Everybody thinks that, the algorithm's out to get you, or you're going to be canceled. That's probably bullshit, right? Most people nowadays want you to take a stand. They want you to portray your beliefs, right? They want to hear your authentic voice because, again, right, most of the world today is very curated. You have to tippy toe around things, and I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings or whatever. Personally, I don't think, especially as a coach, right? I obviously don't. My goal is not to hurt your feelings, but in order for me to help you and give you the most benefit, I need to be honest with you, right? And if that unfortunately hurts your feelings, well, then that's something mentally that we have to work through, right? So that stage 2, right, when I was in college was really when I broke out of my shell. Even heading into FAU, like that's really where I felt, predominant. That's where I felt like, okay, I'm in control of things, right? I mean, obviously training, and I know I'm kind of rambling here, but training Division I college athletes, I mean, they're kids that are essentially the same age as me, right? But I'm the one holding the whistle, and I'm the one telling them what to do. It's like, okay, well, you are in control in specific areas of your life. Obviously, some other areas you need to take a back seat to people who are your mentors or people who obviously have more experience or more say in things, right? I had bosses at the time, so couldn't tell them to go fuck off. But, an athlete here or there, I could tell them, like, listen, you need to listen to me. I'm in control. I'm the one with the whistle. You're in my domain now, right? I'm the expert, and I'm here to help you. So you need to follow what I have to say, and we'll do this together. And then once I got to Equinox, which is where I started my one-on-one personal training career, that's really when I said, okay, now I need to start really impacting people's lives, right? I have a decent understanding of who I am and what I believe in, right? This no bullshit approach towards fitness, right? I'm all about what the facts are, right? What's actually going to help you get stronger? What's actually going to help you become a healthier person? What's going to help refine your thought process, right? And really reframe your belief system so that you can become a catalyst for your own success, right? And when I started Equinox again, it's a big refinement period for me. I had a lot to learn there. And again, I was very grateful that I had the mentors that I had both as a youth in college and obviously when I started my career at Equinox. But it was really then that I said, okay, people are paying me now a lot of money. I had clients paying me Equinox $40,000 a year to train with me. Like, okay, well, if they're going to pay that kind of money, they believe in me, then I need to be the person that I know I can be. And I can really start to, impact these people's lives and make sure that they're setting themselves up for a healthy future. And then obviously in 2018, I started, for anyone who knows me, you kind of know my story or who's followed me. But those of you who don't, in 2018, I left Equinox after being a top 50 trainer for 2 out of the 3 years I was there. And Equinox is a huge, I mean, you know, Joe, but yeah, for people who, maybe live in the Midwest or aren't around a big city, they don't really know.
Under a rock.
Yeah, under a rock. Equinox is one of the biggest fitness health clubs in the world, really, right? And they have over 3,000 trainers. So to be in the top 50, I mean, I was really grinding, and I'm not saying that to toot my own horn, just to, if there are trainers listening, like, you're going to have to work your ass off to get to be one of the most successful in your field. And being at Equinox, and having that, I was like, okay, I can really make a career out of this. So in 2018, feeling confident about that, I left Equinox to start my own in-person business. And then obviously, I feel like I got a little faster jump on it. I got into the online realm around 2019. Mm-hmm. And then when the pandemic hit, decided to, take my talents fully online, as LeBron James would say, so, obviously living in Miami, you gotta love that he came down to Miami and brought some championships with him. So, I took my talents fully online, and it's been a blessing ever since. I've been able to do things that I never thought were going to be possible. Right. I obviously lived on South Beach for almost a decade, which is, crazy now that I'm back in upstate New York to think that I made that possible, because most people don't make it 3 years in South Beach. It's a pretty wild place to live. But then I lived in Puerto Rico for 6 months, and the timing just didn't work out. We got, my girlfriend and I got down there, and then a month after we moved to Puerto Rico, she got pregnant. So I was like, okay, time to figure out how we're going to pack everything back up and move back home to upstate New York. She's also from the area that we live in now, and be closer to family so that we can start our own family and have the support that we need.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love how you laid that all out, and there's so much to dive into. And I think the best way for me to go about this is to probably just highlight a few of the things that I think should be reiterated. So there's a quote that I absolutely love by James Watkins, and he said, "A river cuts through rock, not because of its power, but because of its persistence." And that's what I heard throughout your story, right? And I think anybody who's ultra successful at whatever they do needs to have a certain level of persistence, resilience, dedication, commitment, you name it. You need to be able to push forward even when you're not necessarily getting the outcome that you want. So that's one thing. The other thing too is, on Instagram, social media, wherever it is, you said, we're looking at people's highlight reels and we're comparing our real lives to somebody else's highlight reel. And as much as you and I might understand that, there are plenty of people out there who don't necessarily internalize that and don't really trust that. And they see somebody else's life through the lens of social media, and it becomes, the grass is always greener kind of thing. And comparison truly is the thief of joy. So I think that is definitely something to just reiterate. And then what you said is what other people think of us is really none of our business. It really doesn't matter. And as long as we think highly of ourselves and we are comfortable with who we are authentically, that's really all that matters. And the last thing I'll say is it sounds like a lot of what you do is you help people build confidence. And you and I both do something very similar. The ways we go about it might be slightly different. The populations we work with might be slightly different. But really what I see as my job is to help identify where somebody is, where they want to go, and then help them bridge that gap. And one of the things that I've needed in my own life is to borrow confidence from other people. And I'll use that term, but this one vivid example happened to me a few years ago when I started training people on my own outside of my full-time job. And I was charging $50 an hour. And so for anybody who's right, you're smiling over there because, mm-hmm. That's super cheap for a training session.
It's a steal.
Right. So I went to this client's home, trained them. They said, listen, I'm going to pay you $50, but come back next time and charge me more, please. And so I came home and I was in disbelief and I couldn't figure it out. So I came back and I charged them $75 the next time. And they said, listen, come back next time, charge me more. And if you don't, I'm going to pay you what you're worth. So I charged $125 and they said, listen, I'm going to pay you $150 and just know that you're worth more than this. And it was this really big lesson and turning point for me where somebody else actually just helped me realize what I was worth from a monetary perspective. But I think we go through those moments in life where we realize because of somebody else, how much we're actually worth. And at the end of the day, really money is not important, but what we're worth is important. And so for you, Josh, kind of like as you've gone through those 3 stages of life and you've thought about your worth from just kind of a global perspective, not even monetary, when you face setbacks, struggles, challenges, obstacles now, what is your mindset and what are you thinking about when it comes to your worth and your identity in relation to those struggles?
Well, I'm glad that you brought up the, monetary value around our, what we as, coaches and trainers offer, because I think it really ties into, your personal value and your belief in yourself, right? And we tend to always, again, going back to what we were both saying, we tend to always think that, oh, well, I'm not worth this amount, right? Versus somebody else who's already charging that, right? When really it's about the belief that you have in yourself, and again, the results that you're going to help someone else achieve, right? Like you mentioned, starting at point A, wanting to get to point B, that bridge between the 2 points, right, is really where we provide the value.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, how I work myself through this belief structure, again, I'm no different than anybody else, right? I always like to reiterate that, because again, from the outside, you can, oh, Josh has all this stuff, and I lived obviously in Miami, and oh my God, I did all this, I was able to go to parties, and I also worked, and I was successful at Equinox, and blah blah blah, whatever it may be, right? I'm no different than everybody else, right? I have a myriad of insecurities that I'm still working through to this day, and I will continue to work through probably until the day I die, to be honest, right? I don't think you ever reach that peak of, actual calm and true full belief in yourself, right? But it's, again, as you mentioned, the persistence past those insecurities, right? What I like to call the restructuring of your belief system from a limiting belief, right? The restructuring of your belief system from a limiting belief to what I like to call a liberating truth, right? Limiting beliefs hold you back. They constrict you. They keep you from being able to accomplish the things that you want to accomplish. Whereas a liberating truth is something that, again, you can use as a catalyst for future success. You can take that liberating truth and you can use it to propel you forward, no matter the obstacle that's in your way. Right. So I always started off with the same process, right? I recognize my limiting belief. I think if you don't notice and name something, then it's going to be very difficult for you to remember it moving forward and for you to overcome it. Right. So I recognize the limiting belief. I ask myself whether or not that limiting belief is actually there or not. Right. Is it true or not? Because most of the times, these limiting beliefs are just constructs in our head. They don't actually exist in real life. But if it did, I want to know that it's actually there. If it doesn't, I'm going to toss it away, right? I'm going to reject that belief. If it is there, right? If that limiting belief does exist, then I'm going to try to figure out a way in order to reframe that belief system, right? What is that belief and how can I restructure it so that it can actually benefit me? So, for example, when I was overweight, I thought, I don't have enough time to work out, right? I don't have an hour to work out. Okay, well, how do I reframe? Because this is one that I hear often, right? I don't have enough time to work out. How do I reframe that so that I actually do feel like I have enough time? Well, okay, if I don't have an hour, how much time do I have? Do I have 45 minutes? Do I have 30 minutes? Do I have 10 minutes, right? Because 10 minutes is definitely better than zero, and it will help you build some momentum towards the future. So, okay, let's say I have 30 minutes. Okay, well, I have 30 minutes 3 days a week. Maybe not an hour 5 days a week, but 30 minutes 3 days a week. I have that time to be able to improve on myself physically. Okay, well, now that I've reframed that belief, then I take that belief and I turn it into a liberating truth. So instead of me saying, I don't have time to work out, I say, okay, I have 30 minutes 3 days a week in order to go out there and benefit my future health in a positive manner, right? That's a lot more inspiring, right? That's a lot more motivating. And again, that allows me to accumulate small wins that are going to help me snowball them into much bigger achievements later on in life.
Yeah, I love that thought process. And, as people can probably infer, that applies to everything, not just fitness. And so I'm so happy you shared that as we head into this next question, because I think it's really going to apply to our conversation. So the question is, what is the hardest thing that you've ever done on purpose, and why did you do that thing?
Man, you're coming with the heaters today, Joe. I mean, the hardest thing I would say is going out on my own, right? I had a very cushy, comfortable corporate, trainer job with a company that had great benefits and a 401k plan. And I had even though I had to still go and find my own clients and sell them on the training packages, right? Which necessarily, if I ran a corporate gym, I wouldn't have my trainers do. But hindsight's obviously 2020, and I obviously don't have a $1 billion company like Equinox. But even with the plethora of people that I had to go try to sell, I left that, right, to go on my own and not have any fallback, right? I discussed this with a couple of my friends who went to Syracuse with me, right? I mean, obviously Syracuse is a very well endowed school, right? Lots of, very rich people, send their kids to Syracuse. It's a private school in central New York. But there are a couple of people in my friend group who don't come from backgrounds like that, right? Who are like myself, who come from low income, single parent families. And we always talk, and it's like, well, how do you think our lives are different than our other friends? Like, well, I don't have a fallback plan, right? If I fail, my failures are going to hurt a lot more than them, right? Not saying that I'm not trying to negate their failures, right? Or the things that their struggles that they have to go through. But for me, I don't have a parent that can pay my rent, right? I don't have a parent that can buy my groceries or that can give me a $10,000 loan or $5,000 loan so that I can continue with my business while I try to work through some of these things. If I don't make money, I literally have no way to survive, right? So going out on my own, especially in 2018, I mean, I was just turned 27 at the time. It's like still pretty young to become a small business owner, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that was a big learning curve for me. Definitely one of the most difficult things that I've ever had to achieve, right? And not from the sense of like actually training my clients, right? That's my bread and butter. That's what I do for a living. But everything else that has to go into being a business owner, right? The prospecting, right? The sales, the marketing, any new projects that you have, right? I was shifting more online, and I can promise you, I tanked when I first started online. I thought that, because I had seen some of my other friends in fitness do the whole subscription model, and obviously, kudos to them. They have, hundreds upon hundreds, if not millions of followers, right? Mm-hmm. Where the subscription model can really work for them. I thought, I'll be able to sell, $15 a month workouts and I'll crush it. And I fell flat on my face, flat on my face. I dumped probably $20,000 into my website, into, making sure that I created all the content and uploaded it. And I had a whole team working with me. And I probably made 2,000 in a year and a half, Wow. So in the red for sure, right? But again, as your point about being persistent, you don't give up, right? You don't give up. You just assess. Yep. You analyze. You analyze, you assess. And then if you need to, you pivot, right? So I moved into, selling higher ticket programs, right? I don't have to have such a large client base, right? I don't have to try to sell everybody, right? I'm not here to make everybody happy. I'm here to help a select few people really change their lives in a very impactful way. But I can do that so much more now selling high ticket programs, right? $1,500 plus than I could ever do selling $15 workouts.
Yeah.
Right.
As someone who left my job 7 months ago to do exactly what you did back then, I can relate very heavily to a lot of what you're saying. And one of the things, before I get to what the main point here is, just, what you were saying about not having a backup plan. There's this phrase, burn the boats, where, you get to the island. If you want to take the island, you have to burn the boats. Or in other words, you got to put your back against a wall, because then the only way to move is forward. And I think as somebody who left a job and felt probably similar things to what you felt, it's scary. And so my main question for you is, logistically, financially, practically, there are all these challenges and obstacles in starting and running and building a business. But to me, it's the emotions. And there's this quote, I'm not going to remember who said it, but something about some days you feel like you are the ocean and other days you feel like you're drowning in it. And I cannot tell you how many days I've had that were awesome, smooth, felt energized, go to bed, wake up the next morning, and for whatever reason, feel like I just got hit by a semi truck. And I'm curious, because I know you've had to experience a lot of that, how you deal with kind of the emotional volatility that comes with doing your own thing and taking complete ownership.
I experience that every week, to be honest. I wake up every Monday morning like, I'm going to absolutely smash this week. I'm going to get so much done. And then, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday hits, and I'm like, I got to keep doing this. There are a couple different things that I remind myself of in order to make sure that I continue with the type of relentless, I like to say relentless consistency that I need in order to see the success that I want in the future. Number one is I don't try to take on too much all at once, right? I read this book, early on and even in my personal training career called Essentialism by Greg McKeown. I don't know if you've read it. Highly recommend that book to anybody. It really hammered home the importance of saying no, right? And being able to figure out what I was going to take on and what I was just going to have to say, like, listen, this just isn't for me, right? Because, I wouldn't even say I'm the most successful person in my friend group, not by a long shot, but I still have a lot of people that come to me for advice. And if I jumped on a call with all those people all the time to help them out and to give my 2 cents, like, I wouldn't have any time for myself, to be honest, right? And this was a big mistake that I learned early on in my career because I did try, where I grew up, right, in the area that we live again now, you help your neighbor, right? If someone needs help, you go and help them. Unfortunately, where I grew up is kind of like a bubble. And when you leave this area or, anyone who's experienced this, right, when you leave a type of place where everybody helps each other and everybody that you ask for help, you can truly rely on. And if they ask for your help, that they're going to take that and they're going to move forward with it, right? Unfortunately, that's not how the rest of the world works, right? A lot of people talk a lot and then there's no substance behind their words, right? There's no action behind their words. So what happened, especially when I lived in Miami, right? Miami is the place, Billy Corbin, I don't know if you know who he is. Yeah. He's the guy that created Screwball and Cocaine Cowboys, right? He says, Miami is a place where shady people go to create a new life. Well, it's also where people go, where unsuccessful people go to create the facade of success, right? By talking a lot, right? Oh, I have all of this great stuff. Look at my clothes. Like I'm wearing Fendi and Prada and, a Balenciaga on my t-shirt, right? Doesn't that mean I'm successful? No, it just probably means you're in credit card debt. But that's besides the point. I was offering all of my advice to, so many of my friends, and I love them, for who they are, but they're not the type of people who are really going to do anything with the advice that I give them. They're not going to apply much, right? So I had to really start to decipher where and when I was going to give my advice and to whom I was going to give it to, right? And to whom I was going to give my most valuable asset, right? That is forever depreciating, and that's time. All right. Time will always be your most valuable asset. It'll also be the only one that you can never get back. Right. It's always depreciating. We only have a specific amount of time on this earth. And no matter how much money you make, no matter how many people you help, every second that ticks on your life clock is one less second that you have to live. Right. So that would be, point number one is like really understanding, where you want to put your energy and your time, right? Because your time is directly correlated and tied to your energy. Yeah. So I really try to focus on 3 big things each and every day, right? I call them my big rocks for that day. I set up my yearly goals. I break those down into quarterly goals, right? And I'm big on setting, small, or a limited number of very impactful goals every year and every month. And I actually have a course, again, another shameless plug coming from me. I have a goal building course called Bulletproof Goals. If you go to my website, coachjoshevans.com, the course Bulletproof Goals is for free. So you can just sign up for free. And I teach you everything that I've learned and that I teach my clients on how to actually create goals that are going to create a concise roadmap for you for your future success. Okay. So I really have three big rocks every day that stem from the funnel of my yearly goals, right? I break them down into quarterly goals, monthly goals, and then weekly goals. And from those weekly goals, I come up with three daily big rocks. Those are the things that I'm really trying to complete. That way I can, again, to use your stream, right? Going through a boulder, right? Allow that stream to flow a little more fluidly. The second thing I always try to remind myself on is that the grass is greener where you water it, right? You talked about, leaving your job and not really having a fallback plan. I can promise you, I scroll through LinkedIn jobs every now and then, right? Just to be like, well, I wonder what's available. Is there something out there that might be better for me, right? A little more security, a little less pressure, whatever it might be. And then I remember like, well, that doesn't necessarily mean that job's going to be better for me, right? One big thing that I really pride myself on that really fuels me within my career is the autonomy that I have over my life, right? I don't have anybody, I mean, obviously other than my clients, right? Like no matter who you are, if you have clients, like you're dictated based on what they need from you, right? Especially when you sell high ticket programs like me. But I dictate when those calls, what days those calls are going to be on, what time slots I have available, right? If I need, we're going to have a daughter in a month here. Like if I need to take her to school, in a few years, or I want to coach her soccer team or whatever it might be, like you better damn well sure you can guarantee that I'm going to be the one coaching her soccer team, and I'm going to be making the time for myself because I have that type of autonomy, right? I swear like a sailor, not because I think it's cool, but just because that's how I grew up in the area here in upstate New York. Everybody does, right? When I worked at Equinox, they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't swear." I'm like, "This is really gonna be tough for me." Like I love saying the word "fuck" and "shit," and it's just like authentically who I am as a person. Every other word out of my mouth is usually a cuss. So, not having to worry about working for some corporate company where they're like, "Oh, you shouldn't really be posting that on Instagram. You said fuck like 14 times." Like, I'll fuck off. I'm going to do what I want to do. So having that autonomy, right, is really another thing that fuels me, and understanding that where I put that effort, that time, my money, whatever it may be, whatever assets I have, wherever I put that is where I'm going to get the most return. Right.
Yeah. That's beautiful. I want to go back to first the point about saying no and being selective with our time. So there's this phrase, and I would love to take credit for this. I might have made this up myself, or I might have read it somewhere and thought it's mine, but sometimes you need to be selectively selfish so that you can be sustainably selfless. And I think that's just another fancy way of saying like, you got to fill up your cup. You have to take care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. And as a yes man, as somebody who loves to jump on opportunities, it's been a lesson I've been learning the hard way through the first almost 2 years of marriage here, that sometimes you do have to say no to good things to make space for better things. And that, opportunities that might seem really good on the surface might actually not align with where you want to go or what your values are. So that's been one thing that's been big for me. And then the other thing that you touched on, and you didn't say it in this way, but I heard it this way, is that true freedom really comes with a cost, and that cost is ownership. And so you've taken complete ownership of your life, of your time, your energy, your resources, and that allows you to have the freedom that you have. But that's a heavy cost. Like ownership is heavy. There's that underlying anxiety that business owners have about, can this go wrong? Can this go wrong? What am I going to wake up tomorrow and half my clients are going to be gone, right?
Absolutely.
That happens, and that's real. But I think the important thing to acknowledge is that you, me, anybody else who's in a business ownership position, we're not different from other people. We still experience the same emotions. We've just been able to move forward despite those emotions. We've learned how to manage those emotions. And I'd love for you to get your input on that, because I think it's a big part of what we do.
I think that's a good point to bring up. I agree with you. And at the same time, I understand that, I think, especially nowadays, right? Entrepreneurship has become such this explosive, sexy thing. Like, oh, I'm an entrepreneur, or I own my own business. And I don't necessarily think it's for everybody, right? I tell people this. I have 95% of my friends work in corporate America. Mm-hmm. And I tell them all the time, like, I'm so fucking jealous of you sometimes. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Not necessarily because they make more money or they don't have the stress that I have. They have their own stresses, right? But there's not that thought in the back of their head, or maybe it's not as loud where they're saying like, oh, there's always something you could be doing, right? You work your 9 to 5, or maybe you work, 60, 70, 80 hours, maybe you work more than 40 hours a week, right? But you get paid time off, right? Get sick time. I don't get sick time. I don't get paid time. If I'm not working, right? Or the people who I have on my team aren't working, I'm not making money. I'm not generating income. I'm not creating content for future income to come in. I'm not creating podcasts, whatever it might be. Nothing is happening if I'm not in control of it, right? And they always go to me like, oh, but you're so lucky you get to own your own business and you have all this autonomy and you have all this control. And it's like, I think it's a double-edged sword, right? I think I'm not very risk adverse, right? I don't have a problem going out there and trying something. I always like to say, like, this is maybe growing up in an Italian family, right? But throwing spaghetti against the wall. Yeah. Right? I have no problem throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks. I have no problem burning a hole in my pocket to see if, that one piece of content or that one thing that I did that works out for me and changes my life forever, right? Mm-hmm. The majority of people aren't like that and probably shouldn't be like that, right? I've been lucky where, I'm 30 years old. I don't have any kids yet, right? I am college educated. Nothing horribly wrong has happened in my life, right? I have no severe injuries, like nothing bad has happened. And I'm very grateful for that, right? But not everybody is like that, right? My mother, for example, had me at 24. I'm almost 100% positive that she was not expecting to get pregnant, and have me at 24 years old, but her life changed forever, right? She couldn't take the type of risk that I was able to take at 24, 25, 27, 30, right? Because she had me. She had someone else that was, she was responsible for, right? You said you were married. I was married at one point, now divorced for the better. But, when I was married, and even now with my girlfriend, right, I have to really think about her, or I had to think about my ex-wife in terms of like, well, where do their needs fall into this, right? I can't just, with my girlfriend who's, now 8.5 months pregnant, I can't now just be like, all right, well, peace out. I'm going back to Miami to hang out with my friends and go to the club, like, and, spend $5,000 like I used to do when we were 26. Because she'd be like, are you fucking stupid? Like, we have a kid on the way. Like, we have rent to pay. Like, we have we're trying to save up for a house, and, we're trying to pay down our credit card debt so that we can, start a savings account for our daughter's college fund. Mm-hmm. So there are all these things that happen in people's lives where they can't necessarily take the type of risk that I've taken. So again, like, I feel very grateful that nothing traumatic has happened in my life. And I have the opportunity to be as, risky as I have been in the past, and not really have a ton of consequence from those risks, right? In case they don't fail. But for most people, I think you really have to figure out, anyone who's listening to this podcast or who will listen to these podcasts in the future, you have to understand what you really want in life, right? And that's why I think creating goals is so important, right? Mm. Really analyzing and looking at your life and what you want from life, right? And then acting on that, putting blinders on and just putting forth the action, right? And again, if shit happens, you assess and you pivot if you need to, right? I have friends who still live in Miami and they're like, oh, I need to make $1 million a year and I need to do all this stuff. And I'm like, man, okay, maybe you do, right? Rent in Miami is skyrocketing right now. It's 150% above what it used to be. One of my friends' rent got jacked up from $3,200 a month to now like $6,000 a month, so it's absurd. Luckily, I don't have that now because I'm back in upstate New York where it's a much more reasonable living, and, you don't have to have a Balenciaga t-shirt up here, right? Like I went to the Tractor Supply the other day and they had a whole thing of Carhartt t-shirts. I'm like, man, $15. Like in Miami, this is like $100 easy, But again, it's like what you want. They love living in Miami, right? They love the lifestyle down there, and therefore you need to fund that lifestyle somehow, right? So you're going to have to make $1 million plus a real estate. Like if you ever want to own a house in Miami, good luck. Like you better be making, high 6 figures into the 7 figures, right? But here, for the price of a studio apartment in Miami, I could buy a 6-bedroom mansion with, 30 acres of land here in upstate New York. So I think it's really dependent on what you want in life, right? I did all that crazy stuff. I want a quieter life. I want, my daughter and my future kids to be able to go outside and run around in the woods. And, my girlfriend and I both grew up with horses. Like, we want to have a stable full of, horses and, be able to do all this stuff and be around family. So decide what you really want in life, right? Again, fuck what everybody else thinks, right? I don't give a shit what my friends in Miami think about my lifestyle now. Trust me, I hear it all the time. Like, oh man, that sounds so boring. I can't believe you're doing it. I'm like, guess what? I don't care, right? Because this is what I want. This is what my family wants. And this is where I plan on spending the rest of my life, right? I'm sure you feel the same way, right? You're in New Jersey. You could be in the city, right? You could be in the city. You could be spending, $4,000 a month living in a closet. But that might not be maybe it is what you want, but it doesn't sound like it, right? Like,
no, absolutely not. No. And I think you make a really good point. And it kind of comes back to just the fact that when you know what you want and you set that goal, like you said, sometimes you just have to put your blinders on and you have to stay in your lane on your path. The grass is greener where you water it, not on the other side. And speaking of horses, speaking of races, running, endurance, the name of this podcast is the Project Endure podcast. And so I'm curious, as this isn't something that's necessarily come up in our previous conversation or this podcast so far, but when you hear the word endurance, what does that mean to you?
For me specifically, I think it's resiliency, right? Resiliency in resiliency through duration, right? How much can you withstand, right? And how far do you really think you can go, or how far can you go, right? I've never been an endurance athlete in my entire life, right? Obviously 230 pounds, there aren't many endurance athletes, 5'10", 230. I played offensive line and I was a catcher. So, in my athletic career, but for me, the ability to endure has really been through my personal life, right? And through the struggles that I've had to go through. And, again, just being relentless and being as consistent as I possibly can be with my values, with my morals, with the way that I talk to people, with the way that I treat people. And again, I'm not perfect, right? I can promise you there are plenty of people out there that think that I'm a giant asshole, right? But the people that really truly know me know that I'm going to be there for you, and you're going to get the authentic me, and I'm going to give you my honest opinion, whether you like it or not. And I have very blue collar, hardworking morals and values, right? Family based, put your nose to the ground and grind type of values. And that's what you're going to get from me no matter what, right? No matter how many ups I have, no matter how many downs I have, you're going to get the same Josh no matter what, right? And I think that's really where, and I love the question, right? I think that's really where I find my endurance, it's through that relentless consistency over the long haul.
Yeah. And I love how you started off with the word resilience, because one of my favorite sayings is that resilience is often endurance with direction. And, endurance can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, but I think without direction, we're missing something. And so, you've spoken about the goals, you've spoken about understanding what you want, where you want to go. And I think running that race with direction and endurance, that's resilience. And that's beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
As we kind of wind things down here, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to preface this last question with the fact that I understand many people will listen to this conversation, and I want this part in particular to feel like you are talking directly to the person on the other end of the podcast. And so with that being said, the question is this: what is the one message that you would have for somebody in the audience listening right now who's going through a challenging season of life?
You're not alone, right? You're not alone. I'm not the first person to say it. I can promise you I'm never going to be the last person that says it, but you're not alone, right? You might feel like you're alone, right? You're at home. There's nobody around. The struggles that you're going through are your own, right? And I love this quote by Joe Rogan, right? The most difficult thing you've ever gone through is the most difficult thing you've ever gone through, right? It doesn't matter what other people have gone through, right? They can never negate the challenges that you faced and vice versa. But even though you face those challenges, even though you might be struggling, you're not alone, right? Seek help. If you're overweight, find a coach that you align with. If you want to get better at soccer, align yourself with a good soccer coach. If you need help with your mental health, find a quality therapist that you feel comfortable talking with, right? that can help you get through that rut, right? Because it's just that, it's a rut. Your feet are not set in concrete, right? This is just a point in your life, and you will get through it if you work towards improvement.
Mm. That's such an important message. And you do, I mean, you hear it a lot, especially in our circle, I would say. And when I say our circle, I think, I'm lumping a lot of things together, but fitness, health, wellness, personal development, you name it. In that circle, the message, you are not alone, is very, very common. But I also want to acknowledge that there are probably a lot of people out there who are in somewhat of a bubble, and they grew up in their community, and they never really stepped outside of their comfort zone to expand their circle with intention. And maybe they do just feel alone, and they don't even realize that other people are out there feeling similar things, who've been through similar things and gotten to the other side. So I just think that message just can't be reiterated enough. And I appreciate you sharing, Josh. And so as we wind down here, I just kind of want to give you the opportunity to let people know where they can find you, connect with you, learn more about what you do.
Well, thank you for the opportunity, Joe. I said at the beginning of the podcast, I really do feel blessed to be here and to have the opportunity to talk to your audience and to talk to you and, share my experiences and, my ramblings and thoughts that go through my head on a daily basis. If you want to reach out to me and let's say you're looking to lose weight, or you just want some advice on fitness, or, the mindset behind getting healthy, you can reach out to me on all social media platforms. I'm pretty much on every single one. My handle is pretty consistent throughout them all. Coach Josh Evans on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok. My YouTube is Josh Evans IRL, the name of my podcast. And you can find me on LinkedIn too, Coach Josh Evans.
Awesome. I love it. And you said the podcast will be coming out at the end of January, correct?
Yeah, January 31st is the launch. So
cool. Now give me a little taste, because I'm very curious. So tell me what's about.
Man, well, I think you've realized it by now, right? I pretty much, blurb out whatever comes into my head. So really what you're going to get on Josh Evans IRL is my unfiltered thoughts on health and fitness, right? Again, because most people consume health and fitness either at a gym, or right where you're trying to sell something, or through social media, right, where it's very curated. You tend to get very narrow, misguided viewpoints on how things really are for people, right? Oh, it's easy to have a six-pack. It's easy to be, shredded, and it's easy to be able to, run on a treadmill at, Mach 10 with a band wrapped around you, and then, immediately get off and do backflips. But it's not like that, right? For the majority of people, myself included, right? I wouldn't say I'm the most athletic person that's ever walked this earth. I can promise you that, right? I go through my own struggles. I still, have ebbs and flows with my weight. And so I really wanted to create, this podcast so that you can really hear the truth about the fitness industry as a whole, about how, real health improvement can be made, and the simple actions that are actually necessary for you to see, success and improvement in your own life, right? I've been working in the fitness industry for over 12 years now. Like I said, in the podcast, I've been very blessed to have been mentored by some, amazing coaches in strength and conditioning, and in personal training, and in nutrition. And I've been able to develop this network around me of some amazing coaches that, I'm really looking forward to talking to and hearing their viewpoints on things. So that's really what you're going to get on the Josh Evans IRL podcast, right? You're going to get me in real life, all my unfiltered ramblings and thoughts, and, some great insight on how you can take charge in your own health.
I absolutely can't wait. And I'll make sure to link everything below so people have easy access. And Josh, just thank you so much again for your time. I love this.
Thank you, Joe.
If you enjoyed this episode of the Project Indoor podcast, go ahead and subscribe, leave a review on your platform of choice, and share this episode with a friend. It helps us get more conversations like this out to more people like you. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you next time. Oh, and one more thing. If you're looking for a community of people all striving to be better together, check out the Project Indoor Hard Things Club. The link is in the description below. We'd love to have you.